The Syrian desert hit different in July, the kind of heat that made your skin crack and your lungs burn with every breath. Wind that carried sand fine enough to seep through tactical gear, and temperatures that could melt the adhesive on military grade. Boots. Most soldiers complained constantly about the conditions, but Emily Reed just pulled her cap lower and kept walking. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 27, Emily looked more like a college track coach than a military medic. Small frame, maybe 5 feet 3 inches in boots, with round wire-rimmed glasses that constantly slipped down her freckled nose. Her blonde hair was always tied back in a tight regulation bun that never seemed to come loose even in the worst conditions. Everything about her screamed, "Handle with care," which was exactly how everyone treated her. "Morning, Reed, Captain," Donovan would call out as she checked medical supplies before dawn. "You sure you don't need help with those crates? Looks heavy for someone your size." She'd just smile, adjust her glasses, and keep working. Never complained, never asked for easier assignments. While other medics rotated shifts, Emily volunteered for the overnight trauma ward. While others socialized in the rec room, she spent her free time organizing emergency kits that weren't even her responsibility. The old-timers found her endearing. "Sweet little thing," they'd say. Probably never raised her voice in her life. They were protective of her in that patronizing way that made Emily's jaw clench, though she never let it show. What they didn't see were the manuals she kept. Pages and pages of ballistics charts, trajectory calculations, and weapon specifications, drawn with the precision of a master gunsmith. Late at night in her bunk, she'd sketch wind pattern analyses and bullet drop compensations by flashlight. One afternoon, the base's Barrett .50 caliber rifle malfunctioned. The firing pin had bent and the armory team was stumped. Emily happened to be walking by when she heard them arguing about the problem. "Excuse me," she said quietly, pushing her glasses up. "Mind if I take a look?" Master Sergeant Wilson laughed. "Reed, honey, this is weapons work. You'll hurt yourself." But she was already kneeling by the disassembled rifle, her small hands tracing the parts with surgical precision. Within 15 minutes, she'd identified the problem and fixed the firing mechanism. The rifle clicked perfectly as she reassembled it. Wilson stared. "How the hell did you?" "I used to study this stuff," Emily said softly, wiping her hands on her pants, "but I quit halfway through." Nobody asked why. They just assumed she wasn't cut out for it, that she'd hit her limit and settled for medical work instead. The truth was buried somewhere in her personnel file, a file nobody had bothered to read in 6 years. Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell walked by her table in the mess hall one evening. Emily was alone as usual, sketching bullet trajectories on a napkin while picking at her dinner. "Interesting hobby," Mitchell said, glancing at her drawings. "Just helps me think, sir," Emily replied quickly, folding the napkin. What she didn't tell him was that every line, every angle, every calculation was textbook perfect. The kind of precision that would make marksmanship instructors weep with pride. At night, when the base grew quiet and most soldiers were asleep, Emily would walk to the shooting range. She'd stand next to the weapon racks, running her hands along the stocks, like she was greeting old friends. The night guards thought it was cute, the little medic with her gun obsession. They had no idea she knew every spring, every pin, every system in those weapons better than they did. Her bunkmate, Private Jessica Morrison, asked her once, "Why don't you ever talk about before the army? Like where you grew up, what you did?" Emily adjusted her glasses and pulled her blanket higher. "Some things are better left buried, Jess." "But buried doesn't mean forgotten, right?" "No," Emily whispered in the dark. "Forgotten doesn't mean gone." Because when bullets were flying and the best marksman in the unit was down, the quiet girl with wire-rimmed glasses would prove that some people don't need permission to save lives. They just need the chance. July 17th, 0347 hours. The emergency alarm cut through the pre-dawn darkness like a knife. Emily jolted awake in her bunk, immediately alert. Around her, other soldiers groaned and rolled over, but she was already pulling on her boots. Level 1 medical emergency meant someone was dying. She ran across the compound, her breath creating small dust clouds in the dry air. The operations center was chaos, radios crackling, officers shouting coordinates, the big situation board already marked with red emergency markers. "What's the situation?" she asked communications specialist Russell. "Bad one," Russell said. Grimly, SEAL team pinned down on reconnaissance mission gone wrong. 5 wounded, 3 critical. Heavy enemy fire preventing evacuation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Emily looked at the tactical display. Open desert terrain, limited cover. Enemy fighters using a ridge as a firing position, keeping the medevac helicopters from landing. Where's our sniper team? That's the problem. Jenkins and Martinez are stuck at the training facility in Qatar. Sandstorm grounded all aircraft. Our backup shooters are en route, but won't be here for at least 4 hours. Emily felt her stomach drop. In these conditions, 4 hours might as well be 4 days. She slipped out of the operations center and headed to the armory where she'd been cleaning gear earlier. The Barrett M82A1 she'd fixed sat ready, cleaned and prepped for a routine training exercise that had been canceled due to operational tempo. Her hands moved automatically, checking the scope, inspecting the barrel, testing the magazine catch, everything she'd learned in another life, in a training program she'd never officially completed. "Reed?" Master Sergeant Wilson appeared behind her. "What are you doing?" She turned, her face calm but determined. "I can handle this rifle, Sergeant." Wilson blinked, then he laughed. "Honey, you're a medic. This isn't a video game. 5 people are going to die if we don't clear that ridge in the next hour," she said quietly. "Every qualified marksman is unavailable. Even if you knew how to shoot, which you don't, you're not authorized. You don't have clearance. You're not certified for combat operations." "I know." Emily was already walking toward the operations center. "But they're dying." She pushed through the doors to find Lieutenant Ramirez, the operations commander, coordinating with search teams. Over the radio, "Lieutenant Ramirez," she said, "I can use the Barrett to clear the ridge." Ramirez looked up from his maps. "Excuse me?" "The M82A1 in the armory. I can use it to take out the enemy position and clear the way for medevac." The room went quiet. Ramirez looked her up and down, taking in her small frame, her wire-rimmed glasses, her soft-spoken demeanor. Then he smiled like she'd just told the world's best joke. "Reed, you're a backup medic. You don't have any marksmanship qualifications. Step aside and let the professionals handle this." Emily didn't argue. She just pushed her glasses up, unwrapped her field scarf, and walked quietly toward the door. Ramirez called after her. "Where are you going?" She paused. "To do what needs to be done." By the time Ramirez realized she wasn't heading back to her bunk, Emily was already at the helicopter pad. The pilot, Warrant Officer Sanchez, was prepping for a dangerous extraction flight. "I need to go with you," she said, climbing aboard with a medical bag. "They'll need immediate care." Sanchez nodded, assuming she was just doing her job as a medic. He didn't notice the long case she slid under the bench seat. The radio crackled to life with Ramirez's voice. "Sanchez, hold departure. We're still working on clearing that ridge." "Sir, if we don't fly now, those SEALs will be dead in 20 minutes, Sanchez replied. "You can't land with that ridge still hot. We'll figure something out, sir." Sanchez grabbed the radio so hard his knuckles went white. Around him, the operations room had gone dead silent. Through the windows, they could see the small figure of Emily sitting calmly in the helicopter, organizing medical supplies. "Jesus Christ," whispered Russell. "She's actually going." The helicopter lifted off into the orange glow of the early morning desert. Emily's heart rate remained steady, her breathing controlled. This wasn't her first time flying into danger, but it had been years since she'd felt the familiar weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The situation was dire. The SEAL team had been conducting reconnaissance when they were ambushed. 3 were critically wounded, including their marksman. They were pinned down in a dried riverbed with minimal cover, while enemy fighters on the ridge had clear lines of fire on any approach. "We can't land with that position still active," Sanchez shouted over the rotor noise. "We'd be shot down before we touched ground." Emily nodded, reaching under the seat for the long case. "Get me within 800 meters of the ridge, facing east." "I need 45 seconds. Sanchez looked confused but banked the helicopter. "What are you going to do?" Emily unlatched the case, revealing the Barrett M82A1. "My job." Sanchez's eyes widened. "You're a sniper?" "I was," Emily said simply, checking the rifle with practiced movements. The helicopter hovered at 800 meters. The side door opened to the rushing wind. Emily positioned herself, adjusting her glasses one last time before looking through the scope. The first shot rang out, the massive rifle's recoil absorbed by her small frame with surprising ease. On the ridge, a fighter fell. The second shot came 3 seconds later. Another fighter down. The third and fourth shots were so close together. They sounded like one extended blast. "Holy shit," Sanchez whispered. Emily fired 3 more times, each shot finding its mark despite the moving helicopter and gusting wind. When she was done, the ridge was clear. "You can land now," she said quietly, securing the rifle. "Who the hell are you?" Sanchez asked. Emily just adjusted her glasses. "I'm a medic." The helicopter touched down 50 meters from the SEAL teams. "Position." Emily jumped out, medical bag in hand, and ran toward the wounded soldiers. The first man she reached was unconscious, pulse rapid, massive blood loss from a wound in his chest. She dropped her medical bag, started in 4, applied pressure. Bandages with the precision of someone who'd done battlefield medicine for years. The second soldier was conscious but in shock, possible collapsed lung. She inserted a chest tube, checked his oxygen levels, monitored his breathing while working on the third victim. "Ma'am," the conscious SEAL whispered through bloodied lips. How did you clear that ridge?" "I followed standard protocols," Emily said, not looking up from her work. "Stay still. I'm getting you out of here." She worked for 15 minutes in the open desert, stabilizing all 5 soldiers before beginning the evacuation. One by one, she helped load them into the helicopter, her small frame somehow managing to lift and carry wounded men twice her size. During the flight back, the most critically wounded SEAL began to crash. Emily performed emergency procedures in the cramped helicopter, her hands never faltering despite the chaos around her. "Base, this is Dustoff 1, she radioed. 5 souls on board, 3 critical but stable, ETA 7 minutes. Ramirez's voice came back. "Roger, Dustoff 1. Medical team standing by." When the helicopter touched down at the base, the entire unit ran. Outside, Ramirez couldn't speak as he watched Emily jump out and immediately continue working on the wounded SEALs. She directed the medical team with calm authority, ensuring each patient was transferred correctly. "All 5 patients stable," she reported quietly when she finally approached Ramirez. "The 3 critical cases will need immediate surgery, but they'll live." Ramirez found his voice. "Reed, how did you?" "If you want to file charges." "Go ahead," she said simply. "But they're alive." That night, Ramirez called his superior officer. "Colonel, I need the full story on Emily Reed. That's classified. 5 men are alive because of her. Unclassify it." The colonel was quiet. For a long moment. Then, Reed was the most gifted sniper we'd ever seen. Set course records that still stand. Completed missions that veterans called impossible. What happened to her? On her last deployment, her team was ordered to hold position during a high-risk operation. Intel said a high-value target would be moving through a village, but children were present. Command ordered no engagement due to potential civilian casualties. But she took the shot anyway? No, she refused to take it. Said the angle wasn't clear enough to guarantee no civilian casualties. Her team leader ordered her to fire anyway. Said the target was worth the risk. Ramirez's brow furrowed, and she still refused. The team leader took the shot himself, killed the target, and 2 children. Jesus. Reed filed a report detailing exactly why the shot shouldn't have been taken. Included calculations proving the risk to civilians had been unacceptable. Her report went against the official story that the civilian deaths were unavoidable. So they destroyed her career, made sure she'd never touch a rifle again, reassigned her to medical support, buried her record so deep most people forgot she existed. Except she just picked up a Barrett and cleared an entire ridge in under 30 seconds. Like she never stopped. The next morning, Emily arrived. For her regular shift. Same old uniform, hair tied back as always, medical bag slung over her shoulder. But something had changed. When she walked through the base, conversations stopped. Younger soldiers stepped aside with something that looked like reverence. Staff Sergeant Lopez had written on the operations board, "She doesn't need a title." She took the shots when nobody else could. The 5 wounded SEALs had survived. Full recovery expected for all of them. Commander Blackwood, the leader of the SEAL team, had asked to meet with Emily. "Ma'am," he said when she visited him in the medical ward, "I heard you weren't even cleared for combat operations." Emily adjusted her glasses. "Clearance doesn't save lives, Commander. Actions do. Why did you risk it? Your career, court-martial, everything." She was quiet for a moment. "Because if I didn't, who would?" Blackwood pulled out a piece of paper. "My entire team signed this. We're requesting that you be reinstated as a combat specialist, full sniper status." Emily read it, folded it. Carefully. "I appreciate this, but I don't need official recognition to do what's right. What if they punish you for yesterday?" For the first time since anyone could remember, Emily smiled, a real smile, not the polite one she usually wore. "They already did, 6 years ago. I'm still here." That afternoon, Ramirez received new orders from headquarters. Colonel Sarah Harrington, regional commander for all special operations, was flying in personally to review the unauthorized engagement incident. Could go either way, Ramirez told his staff. Court-martial or commendation. But Ramirez had spent the night reading Emily's complete file, the parts that had been declassified after yesterday's events. The picture it painted was of a marksman so skilled, so dedicated to protecting lives, that her dismissal from the program looked less like justice and more like bureaucratic revenge. When Colonel Harrington arrived, she asked to speak with Emily. Privately. "Reed," she said, gesturing to a chair in Ramirez's office. "I knew an Emily Reed in Afghanistan. Best shooter I ever served with." Emily saluted. "Yes, ma'am, that was me. Whatever happened to that marksman? She's here, ma'am." Harrington nodded, studying Emily's face. "The incident report from yesterday says you engaged multiple targets from a moving helicopter at 800 meters. That true?" "Yes, ma'am. Most qualified snipers wouldn't attempt those shots." Emily looked directly at Harrington. "Most qualified snipers weren't there." "Ma'am, I was." "You understand you violated about 15 regulations?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you'd do it again?" "In a heartbeat." Harrington smiled. "That's exactly what I needed to hear." That evening, when Emily returned from her shift, Commander Blackwood was waiting outside the medical facility. His arm was in a sling, his face still pale from blood loss, but he was standing. "You saved my men," he said without preamble. "I did my job, Commander." "Both jobs. The one they gave you and the one they took away." He studied her face. "I read your file, the real one. The incident in Kandahar." Emily's expression didn't change, but her hands tightened slightly at her sides. "You were right to refuse that." "Shot," Blackwood continued. "Any decent marksman would have made the same call. Tell that to the review board." "I did, this morning. In writing, with my full SEAL team backing it." Emily adjusted her glasses. "Thank you, but it's been 6 years. Those decisions are buried now." "Not anymore." Blackwood handed her a small box. Inside was a SEAL Team Challenge coin, a rare honor for someone outside the unit. "There's something else," he said, gesturing to a case leaning against the wall. It contained a Barrett M82A1, his personal weapon. "What's this?" Emily asked. "It's yours now. Team gift." Emily stared at the rifle, then back at Blackwood. "Sir, I can't accept this." "I'm not authorized to." "You are now," Colonel Harrington said, approaching from behind them. As of 0800 this morning, Emily turned confused. Harrington pulled a folder from her briefcase. "Speaking of paperwork, I have some documents that need your signature." Emily tensed. "Court-martial papers, most likely. 6 years of quiet service. Ended because she'd done what was right. You're being transferred to the Special Operations Training Command," Harrington said. "Full combat status restored, commendation for extraordinary courage under impossible conditions, and a promotion to Chief Warrant Officer." Emily stared at the papers. "Ma'am, the review board, read your complete file. All of it, including the parts that were classified to protect certain officers' reputations." Harrington's voice carried an edge of controlled anger. "Your removal from the sniper program was politically motivated. This is us fixing a mistake that should never have happened." Ramirez watched from across the room. "Will you accept the transfer, Reed?" Emily looked at the papers, then at the rifle, then back at Harrington. "Are there people who need protecting?" "Always." "Then yes, ma'am." But the real justice came the next day, when Ramirez received another call from headquarters. The team leader who had ordered Emily's dismissal 6 years ago, Major Rollins, was being quietly reassigned to a desk job in logistics. No ceremony, no fanfare, just a sudden transfer that everyone understood meant his career was effectively over. Someone finally read the full after-action reports from Kandahar, the colonel told Ramirez. Turns out Rollins had falsified risk assessments on several operations, cost lives. The Reed incident was just the tip of the iceberg. Ramirez felt a grim satisfaction. What happens now? Now Reed gets to do what she was born to do, and Rollins gets to count staplers for the rest of his career. Word spread quickly through the base. The quiet medic who'd cleared an enemy position from a moving helicopter wasn't just a hero. She was a decorated combat veteran whose career had been derailed by a corrupt officer, the same officer who was now being held accountable for his actions. Junior officers started requesting transfers to the base, hoping to train under Emily. The base commander approved the construction of a new marksmanship facility specializing in ethical engagement protocols. They named it the Reed Training Center. Private Morrison, Emily's former bunkmate, found her packing her few belongings. "You never told me you were a real sniper," Morrison said. "You never asked," Emily replied, folding her old medic uniforms. "Besides, I was a real medic too. Both things can be true." "Will you miss this place?" Emily looked around the small room that had been her home for 6 years. "I'll miss the people, but I won't miss hiding who I am." She left her ballistics notebook on the desk for the next medic. On the last page, she'd written, "Don't judge people by the noise they make. Judge them by how they keep others alive when the world goes silent." 3 months later, Emily stood in the briefing room of the Special Operations Training Command in Virginia. The walls were covered with photos of successful missions, maps of impossible terrain, and commendations for valor. This was where the military's best marksmen came to push the boundaries of what was possible. "Your first assignment," said Major Collins, the training commander, "is a joint exercise with Navy SEALs. You'll be instructing on long-range precision fire in urban environments." Emily studied the training parameters. "Sir, these distances are beyond standard protocol." "Which is why we're sending our best instructor," Collins said, with a slight smile. "Think you can handle it?" For the first time in 6 years, Emily was being asked to do what she did best, with full authority and complete support. "Yes, sir." The training exercise went flawlessly. Emily demonstrated techniques that other instructors had deemed theoretical, her precision and judgment impressing even the most experienced operators. "That's not standard procedure," observed Lieutenant Commander Fisher, one of the SEAL instructors, after watching her demonstration. "No," agreed Collins. "It's better than standard." Word of Emily's skills spread throughout the special operations community. She began receiving requests for consultation on impossible shots, training seminars for ethical engagement protocols, and invitations to speak at military academies. But the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. A letter arrived, forwarded through military channels, postmarked from Afghanistan. It was written in careful English by a man named Ibrahim Nazari. "Dear Miss Emily," it read, "you saved my village from a terrible mistake years ago. Your refusal to fire when children were present spared many innocent lives, including my son Tariq. He was only 7 then. He is now 13 and wants to become a doctor like the American woman who refused to hurt children she had never met. I thought you should know that your courage inspired more than just one decision. It inspired a life." Emily read the letter 3 times before carefully folding it and placing it in her desk drawer next to her commendation. Major Collins found her there an hour later, staring out the window at the training grounds. "Regrets?" he asked. "No," she said quietly. "I was just thinking about all the people who told me I couldn't shoot, that I wasn't qualified, wasn't strong enough, wasn't the right kind of person. And they were wrong about everything except one thing. I'm not the right kind of person to follow orders when innocents might die." Collins nodded. "That's exactly why you're here." That evening, Emily called Lieutenant Ramirez at her old base. "How's the new medic working out?" she asked. "Good, but she asks a lot of questions about you. Wants to know how you learned so much about long-range ballistics." "What did you tell her?" "That some people are exactly who they appear to be, and others are who they need to be when the moment comes." 1 year later, Emily received an emergency call. A special operations team was pinned down in a remote location, conditions even worse than before. 5 wounded operators, enemy fire. Preventing evacuation, weather-limiting air support. "It's impossible," the voice on the line said. "No one can make those shots." Emily looked at Major Collins. He nodded. "Tell them we're inbound," she said. This time, she wasn't operating alone. 3 of her students volunteered to join the mission, and the team's best medic, Staff Sergeant Rivera, handled the medical equipment. They launched into conditions that would have grounded any conventional aircraft. As they approached the target area, Emily could see the entire base gathered in the operations center, watching the mission unfold on tactical displays. The same people who had watched her leave as a medic now watched her return as the military's premier precision shooter. Commander Blackwood met them as they prepared for insertion. "We meet again, Chief Reed." "Seems like it, Commander." The operation was textbook perfect. Emily and her team established overwatch positions, cleared the enemy threats with surgical precision, and created a safe corridor for medical evacuation. All 5 operators extracted safely, medical treatment provided en route, no complications. But as they prepared to depart, Blackwood handed Emily a package. "From the team," he said. "Small token of appreciation." Inside was a photograph. Emily behind her rifle during that first emergency. Glasses slightly askew, but her expression calm and determined. Below it, an inscription. She doesn't need to prove herself. She already fired when nobody else dared. That night, back at the training command, Emily found herself in the facility's quiet room, surrounded by photos of successful operations and the faces of operators who'd pushed the boundaries of possibility. On her desk, next to the letter from Afghanistan and her military commendations, she placed the photograph from Blackwood. Major Collins stopped by. "You know what I realized today?" "What's that?" "When we first met, I thought you were just another good shooter who'd gotten a second chance. But watching you work, reading your files, you're not a marksman who learned to be a medic. You're a healer who learned to shoot." Emily considered this. Maybe that's why I couldn't take that shot in Kandahar. It wasn't about shooting. It was about the promise every healer makes. First, do no harm. Collins nodded. "There's a difference." Colonel Harrington joined them. "Speaking of differences, we have another special operation tomorrow. Hostage situation in West Africa. Conditions are—" She paused, challenging Emily. Emily smiled the same quiet smile that had puzzled her colleagues at her old base. "When do we deploy?" "Oh, 600 hours. Think you can handle it?" She stood, gathering her equipment. "Sir, I've been handling impossible situations my whole career. The only difference now is that I have permission." As she walked toward the door, Harrington called after her. "Reed?" "Yes, ma'am?" "For what it's worth, some of us always knew you had permission. It just took the rest of the world a while to catch up." Outside, the Virginia night was clear and calm, so different from the desert heat where she'd finally reclaimed her identity. Emily walked to the armory, where her rifle waited, ready for tomorrow's mission. She placed her hand on the stock, the same gesture she'd made countless times in Syria when she thought nobody was watching. The difference was that now she wasn't hiding who she was. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with a text message from Private Morrison, still stationed at her old base. "Saw the news about your operation today. The new medics here all want to learn to shoot. You started something." Emily typed back, "Tell them marksmanship isn't about rank or clearance. It's about being willing to stand between others and harm when they can't protect themselves." She looked up at the stars, thinking about tomorrow's mission. Somewhere out there, people needed protecting, and for the first time in 6 years, she was exactly where she belonged. Not hiding in the shadows, but ready to take aim at whatever threat came next. The world was full of quiet people doing extraordinary things, teachers who could build, mechanics who could lead, medics who could shoot. They weren't waiting for permission. They were waiting for the moment when someone needed saving. And when that moment came, they wouldn't ask if they were qualified. They would just ask, "If I don't do this, who will?" Sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones nobody notices until the bullets start flying. And they're the only ones willing to stand their ground. The next morning, word of Emily's remarkable marksmanship had spread through the base like wildfire. Soldiers who had barely noticed her before now watched with newfound respect as she made her way to the medical facility. The whispers followed. How she had cleared an entire ridge of enemy fighters from a moving helicopter, saving an elite SEAL team when no other qualified marksman was available. Emily ignored the attention, keeping her head down and her focus on her medical duties. But things had shifted. The condescending protection from male colleagues had transformed into genuine respect. No one called her honey or sweetie anymore. No one offered to carry her gear. I heard she scored higher than anyone in the history of the marksmanship program, one young private whispered to another as Emily passed. I heard she can hit a target at 2,000 meters in high winds, added another. The truth, buried in her classified file, was even more impressive. Emily Reed had once been the most promising precision marksman the military had ever seen. Her understanding of ballistics wasn't just academic, it was intuitive, almost supernatural. She could account for wind, temperature, humidity, and a dozen other variables with barely a moment's calculation. Her instructors had called it seeing the invisible path, the ability to visualize exactly how a bullet would travel before ever pulling the trigger. Lieutenant Ramirez found her reorganizing the trauma kits in the medical supply room. "Read," he said, clearing his throat. "I owe you an apology." Emily looked up, pushing her glasses into place. "For what, sir?" "For dismissing you yesterday. For not listening when you said you could handle the Barrett." She continued organizing supplies, her movements efficient and precise. "You made a reasonable assumption based on the information you had, sir." "That's just it. I should have had better information." Ramirez handed her a folder. "Your complete service record was declassified this morning. I've been reading it." Emily took the folder but didn't open it. She knew what was inside, the record of her rise through the ranks as the military's most gifted marksman, followed by her sudden demotion and reassignment after the Kandahar incident. 6 years ago, you were on track to become the youngest master instructor in the history of the precision marksmanship program, Ramirez continued. Your scores were unprecedented. You'd completed missions that veterans considered impossible. Emily said nothing, just continued organizing medical supplies. Then Kandahar happened. Ramirez's voice softened. Your team was positioned to eliminate a high-value target, but you refused to take the shot because children were present in the kill zone. The shot wasn't clean, Emily said quietly. The risk to civilians was unacceptable. Your team leader, Major Rollins, ordered you to fire anyway. Yes, and when you refused, he took the shot himself. Emily's hands stopped moving for just a moment. He killed the target, and 2 children. And then he buried you. Used his influence to have you removed from the program, your record classified, your skills wasted. Ramirez shook his head. All because you refused to compromise your principles. Is there a point to this conversation, sir? Emily asked, resuming her work. Yes, I want to know why you became a medic. You could have fought the decision, requested transfer to another unit, even left the military. Why stay and accept a role so far beneath your abilities? For the first time, Emily turned to fully face him. With all due respect, sir, being a medic isn't beneath anyone. It's one of the most important jobs in the military. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. Emily's voice remained soft, but there was steel beneath it. You want to know why I didn't fight to get my old position back? The answer is simple. I was still serving a purpose, still saving lives. Just in a different way. Ramirez studied her face. And yesterday? Why risk everything to pick up that rifle again? Because in that moment, the rifle would save more lives than my medical bag. She pushed her glasses up. It was never about the weapon, sir. It was always about the people. Before Ramirez could respond, an alarm sounded, not the urgent emergency klaxon, but a general alert. Both of them headed for the operations center. Inside, the tactical display showed a new situation developing. A supply convoy had been ambushed 40 kilometers north of the base. 3 vehicles disabled, at least 8 wounded, and the convoy was now pinned down by sniper fire from multiple positions in the surrounding hills. The enemy has at least 3 precision marksmen in elevated positions, Captain Donovan was explaining. They've got our people pinned down tight. Can't move to better cover. Can't evacuate the wounded. What about air support? Ramirez asked. Unavailable for at least 90 minutes. There's a sandstorm building between us and the airfield where our close air support is stationed. Conventional response? We can dispatch a quick reaction force, but they'd have to approach over open terrain. Those enemy snipers would cut them to pieces before they got within half a kilometer of the convoy. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Emily stood quietly near the back, listening. How long can the convoy hold out? Ramirez finally asked. Maybe an hour, 2 if they're lucky. But 3 of the wounded are critical. They need immediate evacuation. Ramirez's eyes found Emily in the crowd. He didn't say anything, just held her gaze for a long moment. Emily, step forward. I can counter their snipers. The room went quiet again, but this time with a different energy. After yesterday's display of skill, no one was laughing at her offer. You can't go alone, Donovan said. Even you can't engage 3 separate sniper positions simultaneously. I don't need to engage them simultaneously, Emily replied. I just need to get close enough to locate their exact positions, then neutralize them one by one. That's a suicide mission, someone muttered. Not with the right team, Emily said, turning to Ramirez. I need a small fire team for security, a driver who knows the terrain, and immediate medevac on standby. Ramirez didn't hesitate. Make it happen, Donovan. Reed is in tactical command of this operation. 20 minutes later, Emily was in the armory, selecting her equipment with methodical precision. She chose the Barrett M8 one she had used the day before, plus a more versatile SR-25 marksman rifle for medium-range work. Her movements were quick and sure, muscle memory guiding her hands through gear she hadn't touched in 6 years. Master. Sergeant Wilson watched her with newfound respect. Need any help selecting rounds, Chief Reed? No thank you, Sergeant, Emily replied, already loading magazines with specialized ammunition. I need a 191 match grade for the Barrett, standard M118LR for the SR-25. Wilson nodded appreciatively. You know your stuff. I should. Emily didn't look up from her work. I helped design the testing protocols for the A191 before I was reassigned. Wilson's eyes widened. That was you? The A191 is the most accurate long-range round in our inventory. I know. Emily finished loading the final magazine and secured her gear. That's why I'm taking it. Outside, her team was waiting. A 4-person security element led by Staff Sergeant Ortiz, a seasoned combat veteran who had volunteered immediately when the call went out. The driver was Specialist Rodriguez, who had grown up in the region and knew every back road and wadi in the area. We'll take 2 vehicles, Emily explained, pointing to the tactical map. Main roads are compromised, so we'll approach from the southeast using this dry riverbed. It should give us cover for the first 15 kilometers. And after that? Ortiz asked. After that, we're in the open for about 800 meters before we reach this ridgeline. She pointed to a rocky outcropping. That's my firing position. It gives me clean lines of sight to all 3 suspected enemy positions. What about us? Asked Private Jenkins, one of the security team members. Your job is to keep me alive long enough to neutralize the threats. Once the snipers are down, we'll move forward to help evacuate the wounded. Rodriguez studied the map. That open stretch is going to be dangerous, ma'am. Those snipers will see us coming. Emily nodded. Yes, they will. That's why we're going. To give them something else to look at. She pointed to another area on the map. I need a distraction team to approach from the north. Nothing serious, just enough movement to draw their attention for the 90 seconds we need to cross the exposed ground. Ortiz looked at her with new respect. You've done this before, many times, Emily said simply. In far worse conditions than this. As they prepared to move out, Commander Blackwood appeared, his arm still in a sling from his injuries the day before. Reed, he called. A word. Emily stepped aside to speak with him privately. You're going after those snipers, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. My team is still recovering, or we'd be right beside you. He handed her a small object, a SEAL team combat knife in a specialized sheath. Take this. It's saved my life more times than I can count. Emily started to protest, but Blackwood cut her off. It's not a gift. It's a loan. I expect it back. which means you come back too. Understood? Emily tucked the knife into her gear. Understood, Commander. As she turned to leave, Blackwood added, Reed, those men you're facing, they're not amateurs. Intelligence suggests they're former special forces, highly trained. Neither am I, sir, Emily replied. An amateur, I mean. For the first time, Blackwood smiled. No, I suppose you're not. The team moved out, 2 vehicles taking the long way around to avoid main roads and known enemy positions. Emily sat in the lead vehicle, mentally reviewing everything she knew about the terrain, the weather conditions, and the likely tactics of their opponents. Rodriguez navigated the dry riverbed with expert precision, the vehicle bouncing over rocks and sand, but making good time. When they reached the end of their covered approach, he stopped and looked to Emily. This is it, ma'am. Open ground ahead. Emily checked her watch. The distraction team should be in position. Ortiz, radio check. Distraction team confirms ready, Ortiz replied after speaking into his radio. Execute in 30 seconds, Emily ordered. Maximum speed across the open ground. No stopping for any reason. As Rodriguez revved the engine, Emily found herself in a familiar mental space. The calm, focused state that had once made her the military's most promising marksman. Time seemed to slow. Details became sharper. Her breathing steadied automatically. Now, she said. The vehicles burst from cover, accelerating hard across the open ground. In the distance, they could see flashes of movement as the distraction team made themselves visible, just long enough to draw attention. They were halfway across when the first shot rang out. It missed, kicking up dust 20 meters to their right. They've spotted us, Ortiz reported calmly. Keep moving, Emily ordered. Weave but don't slow down. 2 more shots came in quick succession, both missing but getting closer. Emily watched the dust patterns, instantly calculating the origin. Points. Sniper 1 is at bearing 045, approximately 1,200 meters, she reported. Sniper 2 is at 078, similar distance. No sign of the third yet. The vehicles reached the cover of the ridgeline with no casualties. Emily was out before her vehicle fully stopped, unloading her equipment with practiced efficiency. Secure. A perimeter, she ordered the security team. I need 8 minutes uninterrupted. While Ortiz's team established defensive positions, Emily set up her observation post. First, she used high-powered binoculars to scan the surrounding terrain, methodically searching for the telltale signs of enemy sniper hides. Then she confirmed her findings with a spotting scope, noting precise locations and distances. I have all 3 positions confirmed, she announced. First target is at 1,185 meters, bearing 043. Second at 1,210 meters, bearing 076. Third is further back, acting as overwatch at 1,450 meters, bearing 062. Plan of engagement? Ortiz asked. I'll take the overwatch position first. He has the widest field of view and could warn the others. Then the closer 2 in quick succession. Emily set up the Barrett, making minute adjustments for wind, temperature, and humidity. The desert air was beginning to shimmer with heat, creating distortion that would affect long-range shots. She accounted for it automatically, adjusting her calculations. Engaging, she said quietly. The Barrett roared, its massive recoil absorbed by her slight frame with surprising ease. Through the scope, Emily watched the third sniper's position. A moment later, she nodded. Target 3 neutralized. She shifted position slightly, reacquiring the second target. Again, the rifle boomed. Target 2 down. The final sniper, now aware he was being hunted, had ducked deeper into cover. Emily waited patiently, her breathing slow and controlled. He's moving, Ortiz warned, watching through binoculars. I know, Emily replied calmly. He's trying to flank to a new position. but he has to cross a small exposed patch to get there. Seconds ticked by. Then, with the same unhurried precision, Emily fired one final time. "All targets neutralized," she reported. "Radio the convoy. Tell them the sniper threat is eliminated and to prepare their wounded for immediate evacuation." As her team moved forward to assist the convoy, Emily remained for a moment on the ridgeline, breaking down her equipment with the same care she'd used to set it up. Her movements were automatic, leaving her mind free to process what had just happened. For 6 years, she had buried this part of herself, the calm precision, the lethal skill. She had convinced herself that serving as a medic was enough, that she could still save lives without returning to the role that had once defined her. But now, looking across the desert at the convoy her actions had just saved, Emily felt a sense of rightness she hadn't experienced in years. Not because she had taken lives, that was never something she celebrated, but because she had protected those who couldn't protect themselves. And she had done it by being exactly who she was meant to be. When they reached the convoy, the scene was chaotic but controlled. The security team helped establish a defensive perimeter, while Emily moved immediately to the wounded soldiers. Her transition from precision marksman to medic seamless and natural. She worked with focused intensity, stabilizing the most critical patients first, then establishing a triage system for evacuation. Her hands, which had been so steady on the rifle trigger an hour before, were equally steady now as she inserted IVs and applied pressure bandages. "You the one who took out those snipers?" asked one of the wounded soldiers, a young sergeant with a chest wound. "Yes," Emily replied, not looking up from his injury. "And now you're patching me up?" He gave a weak laugh. Talk about full service. Emily allowed herself a small smile. "Just doing my job, Sergeant." "Which job?" he asked. "Seems like you've got a few. Whichever one keeps you alive." The medevac helicopters arrived 30 minutes later. By then, Emily had all the wounded stabilized and prioritized for transport. She supervised the loading of the critical cases herself, giving the flight medics detailed briefings on each patient's condition. As the last helicopter lifted off, Captain Donovan approached her. "Chief Reed, headquarters is requesting your immediate return to base. Colonel Harrington has arrived and wants a full debrief." Emily nodded, wiping blood from her hands with a field towel. "Of course, sir." The drive back was quieter than the journey out. The security team, who had been skeptical when first assigned to protect a former medic, now treated Emily with a respect bordering on reverence. They had witnessed firsthand the dual nature of her skills, the precision with which she eliminated threats and the compassion with which she treated the wounded. "Ma'am," Private Jenkins said hesitantly as they neared the base, "can I ask you something?" "Go ahead, Private." "How do you do it? Switch between, taking lives and saving them?" Emily considered the question carefully. "I don't see it as switching, Jenkins. It's all part of the same mission." "What mission is that?" "Protecting those who can't protect themselves." She looked out at the desert landscape passing by. "Sometimes that means eliminating threats. Sometimes it means healing wounds. The method changes. The purpose doesn't." When they arrived at the base, Emily saw that something significant had happened in their absence. Military police were escorting a handcuffed officer to a transport plane, Major Rawlins, the man who had destroyed her career 6 years earlier. Colonel Harrington was waiting in the command center, alongside Lieutenant Ramirez and Commander Blackwood. Their expressions were solemn but satisfied. "Chief Reed," Harrington said as Emily entered. "Excellent work today. The convoy commander reports all wounded are stable and expected to recover fully." "Thank you, ma'am." "You may have noticed Major Rawlins being escorted from the base as you arrived." Emily's expression remained neutral. "I did notice someone in custody, ma'am. After your actions yesterday, I ordered a complete review of the Kandahar incident and all of Rawlins' subsequent operations. Harrington's voice hardened. What we found was disturbing. Falsified risk assessments, unauthorized engagement orders, deliberate manipulation of after-action reports to cover up civilian casualties, and systematic efforts to silence or discredit anyone who questioned his methods, added Commander Blackwood. Including you. Emily absorbed this information silently. 6 years of injustice were being acknowledged and addressed in a single moment. Rawlins is being court-martialed, Harrington continued. His actions cost lives and violated the core principles of our rules of engagement. But more than that, he deprived this military of one of its most valuable assets, you, operating at your full potential for 6 years. Emily looked at Harrington directly. Permission to speak freely, ma'am. Granted. I never stopped serving to my full potential. I just served differently. Emily straightened her posture slightly. Being a medic wasn't a punishment or a demotion to me. It was another way to fulfill the same mission. Harrington studied her for a moment, then smiled. And that, Chief Reed, is exactly why you're being given this. She handed Emily an official folder. Your new assignment. If you choose to accept it. Emily opened the folder and read its contents carefully. She was being offered command of a specialized unit, a combined team of precision marksmen in combat, medics designed to operate in high-risk environments where conventional forces couldn't function effectively. This is unprecedented, Emily said quietly. So are you, Ramirez replied. Someone who understands both sides of combat, the taking of life when necessary and the saving of life whenever possible. That's a perspective we desperately need. Right now. The unit would be yours to build from the ground up, Harrington explained. You'd select the personnel, design the training protocols, establish the operational parameters. Everything based on your unique experience and vision. Emily closed the folder. When would this take effect? Immediately, if you accept. Harrington watched her carefully. Well, Chief Reed. What do you say? Emily thought about the last 6 years, the quiet service, the hidden skills, the constant underestimation. She thought about yesterday's rescue and today's mission. About the lives saved because she had finally been allowed to be her complete self. I accept, ma'am, she said. On one condition. Name it. The unit operates under a strict ethical framework. We never take a shot that endangers civilians, no matter how important the target. We never compromise our principles for operational expediency. Harrington nodded. Exactly why you're the right person for this command, Reed. The paperwork will be processed by morning. As Emily left the command center, Commander Blackwood fell into step beside her. So, he said, your own unit. Impressive. Emily shrugged slightly. It's just another way to serve. It's more than that, and you know it. Blackwood stopped, forcing Emily to stop as well. It's vindication. Proof that standing by your principles, even when it costs you everything, is the right choice. I didn't lose everything, Commander. I just changed directions. And now? Emily considered the question. Now I get to combine both paths. Use every skill I have to protect those who need protecting. Blackwood nodded. My team will be fully recovered in a few weeks. When that happens, I'd like to volunteer our services for joint operations with your new unit. Emily allowed herself a small smile. I'd welcome that, Commander. Oh, and Reed? Blackwood gestured to his combat knife, still secured to her gear. You can keep that. Something tells me you'll put it to good use. That night, as the base settled into its evening routine, Emily sat alone in her quarters, reviewing the personnel files of potential candidates for her new unit. The stack was impressive. Dozens of skilled operators had already volunteered, many of them changing their deployment preferences specifically to serve under her command. A knock at her door interrupted her work. It was Private Morrison, her former bunkmate. I heard the news, Morrison said, excitement evident in her voice. Your own command. That's incredible, Emily. Thank you, Jess. Morrison hesitated, then asked, is it true what they're saying? That you're building a unit that combines precision shooting with advanced medical capabilities? That's the plan. Then I want in. Morrison's expression was determined. I've been working on my marksmanship scores, and I'm already qualified as a field medic. I know I don't have your experience, but I'm willing to learn. Emily set aside the personnel files and really looked at Morrison for the first time. What she saw wasn't just enthusiasm but genuine commitment. It won't be easy, Emily warned. The standards will be higher than anything you've experienced before. I know, that's why I want it. Emily nodded slowly. Report to the training. Range at 0500 tomorrow. We'll see what you're capable of. After Morrison left, Emily returned to her review of the personnel files, but her mind kept circling back to a question Commander Blackwood had asked her earlier. And now? Now, after 6 years of hiding her skills, of being underestimated and overlooked, of serving quietly while knowing she could do more. Now what? The answer, she realized, wasn't about vindication or justice, or even the new command. It was about integration, bringing together all the parts of herself that she had been forced to separate. The precision and discipline of the marksman, the compassion and healing skills of the medic, the leadership abilities she had always possessed, but rarely been allowed to use. Emily Reed wasn't just a shooter who could heal, or a healer who could shoot. She was both, simultaneously and completely. And in that wholeness lay her true strength. Dawn broke over the desert in shades of gold and amber, the sun's first rays casting long shadows across the training range. Emily had been there since 430, preparing for Morrison's assessment and contemplating the challenge ahead. Building a specialized unit from scratch wouldn't be easy, but the opportunity to create something that embodied both aspects of her expertise, precision marksmanship, and medical response felt like a calling she couldn't ignore. At precisely 0500, Private Morrison arrived, clearly nervous but determined. She was surprised to find not just Emily waiting for her, but Commander Blackwood and Colonel Harrington as well. "Ma'am," Morrison saluted. "Reporting as ordered." Emily nodded. "At ease, Private. Today isn't just about assessing your skills for my unit. It's about understanding why those skills matter." She gestured to a table where 3 rifles were laid out. "We'll start with marksmanship." Morrison's performance was respectable, not exceptional, but solid. Her groupings at 300 meters were tight, her understanding of fundamentals sound. But Emily wasn't just watching her accuracy. She was studying Morrison's breathing, her patience, her ability to adjust to changing conditions. "Now for the medical portion," Emily said after an hour of shooting drills. She led Morrison to a simulation area where a combat medical scenario had been set up with training mannequins. Multiple casualties, limited supplies, hostile environment. "Show me your process." Morrison moved through the scenario methodically, triaging effectively and demonstrating good technical skills. Again, not exceptional, but competent and calm under pressure. When both assessments were complete, Emily, Blackwood, and Harrington conferred briefly while Morrison waited anxiously. "Private Morrison," Emily finally said, "your skills in both disciplines are adequate, but not outstanding. In normal circumstances, that wouldn't be enough for this unit." Morrison's face fell, but she maintained her composure. "However," Emily continued, "there's something more important than technical perfection, something I can't teach." She stepped closer. "When you approach a patient or take aim at a target, you bring your whole self to the task. No separation, no conflict. That integration is rare and valuable. So, does that mean?" "It means you're the first official member of specialized tactical and medical response team," stammered. Emily extended her hand. "Welcome aboard, Morrison." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Emily interviewed dozens of candidates, assembled a core team of 8 operators, and began designing training protocols that married precision shooting with advanced medical response capabilities. The concept was revolutionary soldiers who could eliminate threats and immediately transition to saving lives, sometimes in the same operation. Colonel Harrington had given Emily unprecedented latitude in establishing the unit's operational guidelines. The first and most important: no engagement that risks civilian casualties, regardless of the target's value. Some will call it impractical, Harrington warned during a planning session, even naive. They can call it whatever they want, Emily replied. But I've seen the alternative. I've seen what happens when we compromise our principles for operational necessity. We don't just lose civilians, we lose ourselves. Blackwood, who had become a key advisor to the new unit, nodded in agreement. The best warriors aren't those who can take the most lives. They're those who understand exactly when taking a life is necessary and when it isn't. As the unit took shape, Emily faced skepticism from traditionalists who questioned whether combat roles and medical functions could truly be integrated effectively. The old military paradigm kept these functions strictly separated. Shooters shoot, medics heal, and never should the two overlap. Major Lewis, the base's longtime operations officer, was particularly vocal. Read, what you're proposing violates basic combat doctrine. You can't have your operators constantly switching mindsets from shooter to healer. It creates hesitation, confusion, vulnerability. Emily listened patiently to these concerns during a command staff meeting, then responded with characteristic quietness. Major Lewis, with respect, that separation is artificial. In reality, every decision to engage or not engage is fundamentally a life-saving calculation. We're just making that connection explicit. Theory is one thing, Reed. Real combat is another. I'm well aware, Emily replied, her voice still soft but with an undercurrent of steel. Which is why we're not deploying until every member of this unit demonstrates seamless integration of both skill sets under simulated combat conditions, Lewis scoffed. And who's qualified to assess that? I am, Emily said simply. Along with Commander Blackwood and Colonel Harrington. The room fell silent. Everyone present knew Emily's recently declassified record, her unprecedented marksmanship scores, her combat experience, and the moral stand in Kandahar that had cost her 6 years of career advancement. Lewis had no response, but his skepticism remained evident. The true test came sooner than anyone expected. 3 weeks into training, with the unit still taking shape, intelligence reported a high-value target had been located in a remote village near the border. The target, a bomb maker responsible for multiple attacks on coalition forces, was supposedly hiding in a compound at the village center. Special Operations Command wanted to launch an immediate strike. The problem: the village was hosting a wedding celebration, with dozens of civilians gathered near the target's location. Conventional wisdom says we either strike anyway and accept civilian casualties as collateral damage, or we let him escape, Colonel Harrington explained during an emergency briefing. Neither option is acceptable. Emily studied the satellite imagery, mentally calculating angles and approach vectors. There's a third option. My team can insert here, establish overwatch positions with precision fire capabilities, and wait for a clean shot opportunity. And if no clean shot presents itself? Asked Major Lewis, still skeptical. Then we transition to direct action. A small team enters the compound to extract the target while maintaining the medical capability to immediately respond to any civilian casualties. Lewis shook his head. Your unit isn't ready, Reed. They haven't completed the full training. Regimen, my core team is ready, Emily replied. 4 operators, myself, Morrison, Ortiz, and Thompson. Each fully qualified in both disciplines. Colonel Harrington considered the proposal. The risk is significant. So is the opportunity, Emily countered. This isn't just about capturing one bomb maker. It's about demonstrating that we can be effective without compromising our principles. That precision and restraint aren't weaknesses, they're strengths. After a tense deliberation, Harrington approved the mission. Stammert would insert under cover of darkness, establish overwatch positions, and wait for a clean opportunity to capture the target without civilian casualties. The night before deployment, Emily found Morrison cleaning her gear, tension evident in every movement. "Nervous?" Emily asked. Morrison looked up. "A little. It's our first real mission." "It is. But we're not doing anything we haven't trained for." "The stakes feel different," Morrison admitted. "What if Lewis is right? What if we can't transition between roles effectively in actual combat?" Emily sat down beside her. "When I was first in marksmanship school, my instructor said something I never forgot. He said, 'A bullet has no conscience. It goes where you send it. The conscience has to be in the person pulling the trigger.' What does that mean for us? It means the separation between shooter and healer is artificial. Both require the same core quality, a deep commitment to protecting life. Sometimes that means taking action. Sometimes it means showing restraint, but the underlying purpose never changes." Morrison nodded slowly. "I think I understand." "Get some rest," Emily said, standing. "We deploy at 0200. The insertion went exactly as planned." Under cover of darkness, the four-person team approached the village using natural terrain features for concealment. By dawn, they had established 2 sniper hides with clear views of the target compound. Emily and Morrison took the primary position, a small outcropping that provided both cover and a commanding view. Ortiz and Thompson set up in a secondary location that offered a different angle of approach if needed. "Target compound in sight," Emily reported over the secure comm channel. "Multiple civilians moving in the area. No visual on primary target." "Maintain position," came Harrington's voice from the command center. "Intel suggests he rarely leaves the compound." For 6 hours, they watched and waited. The wedding celebration continued, with civilians constantly moving through their potential field of fire. Any conventional operation would have been scrubbed by now, or worse, would have risked significant civilian casualties. "Movement at the compound's rear entrance," Morrison whispered suddenly. "Male, matches target description." Emily shifted her spotting scope. "Confirm positive ID. Target is moving toward the western alley, away from the main celebration." This was the moment they had been waiting for, the target separating himself from civilians, creating an opportunity for a clean capture, or, if necessary, a precision shot. "Ortiz, Thompson, move to intercept position," Emily ordered. "Morrison and I will maintain overwatch." The plan was for Ortiz and Thompson to approach the target from behind while Emily and Morrison provided cover. If the situation remained calm, they would capture him quietly. If he resisted or posed an immediate threat, they had authorization for lethal force, but only if no civilians were at risk. Everything changed in an instant. As Ortiz and Thompson closed in, a group of children unexpectedly rounded the corner, running directly into the path between them and the target. The bomb maker spotted the approaching soldiers and reached inside his jacket. "He's drawing a weapon," Thompson reported urgently, "but civilians are in my line of fire." The conventional response would be to shoot anyway, to prioritize eliminating the threat over protecting the civilians. But that wasn't Stammert's mandate. "Hold fire," Emily commanded instantly. "Morrison, left side approach. I'll take right. Medical kits ready." Without hesitation, Emily and Morrison abandoned their overwatch position and sprinted toward the developing situation. They approached from different angles, creating a crossfire that deliberately avoided the children's position. The target saw them coming and made a critical error. Instead of using the children as shields, he tried to flee, breaking from their cover and giving Emily a clean shot at his legs. She took it, her bullet striking with surgical precision, disabling without killing. The target fell, his weapon Clattering away, the children scattered, screaming in fear. Emily reached the downed bomb maker first, immediately transitioning from shooter to medic. She secured his weapon, then applied a tourniquet to his wounded leg. Target secured, she reported, non-lethal wound. Administering emergency care. Morrison reached the children, quickly assessing that none were physically injured, but all were terrified. She spoke soothingly in their language, reassuring them while keeping them safely away from the scene. Ortiz and Thompson established a security perimeter, ensuring no other threats could interfere with the medical treatment or evacuation. Within minutes, what could have been a chaotic firefight with civilian casualties had instead become a textbook demonstration of Stammert's integrated approach. Precise application of force followed by immediate medical response with civilian safety prioritized throughout. As they prepared the target for extraction, Colonel Harrington's voice came over the comm. Stammert actual, this is command. Extraction helicopter inbound. Outstanding work. The mission's success reverberated throughout the special operations community. What Emily's team had accomplished capturing a high-value target in the midst of civilians without casualties was considered nearly impossible under conventional doctrine. You made believers out of a lot of skeptics today, Colonel Harrington told Emily during the debriefing, including Major Lewis. Lewis, present at the debriefing, nodded grudgingly. I still have questions about the scalability of your approach, Reed, but I can't argue with the results. It's not about the size of the force, Emily replied. It's about the mindset. Every operator, regardless of primary function, should understand that our ultimate purpose is to protect life. In the weeks that followed, applications to join Stammert tripled. The unit expanded from the core team of 4 to a full complement of 16 operators, each cross-trained in precision marksmanship and advanced medical response. Emily insisted on personally evaluating every candidate, looking beyond technical skills to find individuals who understood the unit's unique philosophy. Some of the most skilled shooters were rejected because they couldn't grasp the integrated approach. Meanwhile, several combat medics with moderate marksmanship abilities were accepted because they demonstrated the right mindset. 6 months after its formation, Stammert had completed 12 operations, each more complex than the last. Their success rate was unprecedented. All primary objectives achieved. 0 civilian casualties, minimal loss of life even among confirmed hostile forces. Word of their approach spread to other military branches and even allied forces. Emily began receiving requests to develop training programs that could be implemented more widely. They're calling it the Reed Doctrine, Commander Blackwood informed her one evening, showing her a military journal article. The integration of precision lethality and immediate medical response within the same tactical element. Emily shook her head. I didn't invent anything new. I just refused to accept the artificial separation between taking lives and saving them. That refusal is exactly what makes it revolutionary, Blackwood replied. You've proven that moral clarity and tactical effectiveness aren't mutually exclusive. That's a paradigm shift. The true validation came from an unexpected source. During a joint operation with conventional forces, Stammert was providing overwatch for a hostage rescue in an urban environment. The primary assault team encountered heavy resistance with multiple wounded operators pinned down in exposed positions. Major Lewis, now commanding the conventional response, found himself in an impossible situation. His men were dying, but sending in additional forces would likely result in more casualties. Stammert actual, this is Badger 6. Lewis's voice came over the comm, tension evident. Request immediate assistance. We have operators down and can't reach them under current fire. Without hesitation, Emily deployed her team in their integrated capacity. Half provided precision fire to suppress the enemy positions, while the other half, including Emily herself, moved to extract and treat the wounded operators. as Emily worked to stabilize a critically injured soldier while bullets impacted nearby. She found herself shoulder to shoulder with Major Lewis, who had risked his own safety to reach his men. "I never understood until now," Lewis said quietly as they prepared the wounded for evacuation. "This isn't about being both a shooter and a medic. It's about never forgetting why we fight in the first place." Emily nodded, continuing her work on the injured soldier, to protect life, even when that means taking it. All 8 wounded operators survived that day. In his official report, Major Lewis credited Stammert's integrated approach as the decisive factor. Their ability to simultaneously address the threat and provide advanced medical care fundamentally changed the outcome of this operation. He wrote, "What Chief Reed has developed isn't just a tactical innovation, it's a moral evolution in how we conduct operations." 1 year after Emily had stood on the helicopter pad with a Barrett rifle, defending her decision to break regulations to save lives, she received new orders. She was being promoted to major and assigned to establish a formal training program for the Reed Doctrine at the Special Operations Training Command. "This isn't just about Stammert anymore," Colonel Harrington explained. "Command wants this approach integrated throughout special operations. They're creating an entire academy built around your principles." Emily was momentarily speechless. An academy? "The Reed Center for Integrated Tactical Operations," Harrington confirmed. "You'll design the curriculum, select the instructors, establish the standards." "I never expected this," Emily admitted. "When I refused that shot in Kandahar, I thought my career was over. Instead, you've transformed military doctrine." Harrington smiled. "Sometimes standing by your principles isn't the end of the journey, it's the beginning." The night before she was scheduled to leave for her new assignment, Emily found Morrison now. Staff Sergeant Morrison, organizing training exercises for the newest Stammert recruits. "You'll do well leading the unit," Emily said, watching her former protege work. Morrison looked up in surprise. "Me? Lead Stammert? My official recommendation is already on Colonel Harrington's desk." "You understand the vision better then." "Anyone. I learn from the best," Morrison replied. "But I'm not you, Emily. You don't need to be. You just need to remember why we do this." Emily gestured to the training area, where operators were practicing the seamless transition between precision shooting and medical response. "These skills aren't in conflict. They're complementary parts of the same mission. Protecting those who can't protect themselves," Morrison said, echoing Emily's words from months earlier. "Exactly." As Emily prepared to depart the next morning, she found herself back at the armory where everything had changed a year before. The Barrett rifle she had used that day was now mounted in a display case with a simple inscription, "Sometimes saving lives requires breaking rules." Master Sergeant Wilson approached as she stood contemplating the display. "Gonna miss you around here, Major Reed." "I'll miss it too," Emily admitted. "But the work continues." "You know what I remember most about that first day?" Wilson asked, not the shooting impressive as it was. "What I remember is how you went straight from clearing that ridge to treating the wounded. No hesitation, no adjustment period. Like it was the most natural thing in the world." "It was," Emily said simply. That's what most folks still don't get. They think you created some complicated new system. But really, you just refuse to accept an artificial division that never made sense in the first place." Emily smiled. "Maybe the best innovations are just removing unnecessary complications." As her transport prepared for departure, Emily found one last surprise waiting. The entire base had gathered to see her off, forming 2 lines leading to the aircraft. As she walked between them, each soldier saluted, not just out of military protocol, but with genuine respect. At the aircraft, Commander Blackwood waited with Colonel Harrington. "Your legacy here is secure," Blackwood said, extending his hand. "But your impact is just beginning." "This was never about legacy," Emily replied. It was about doing what's right, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. That's precisely why it will endure, Harrington added. You've shown that moral courage and tactical excellence aren't opposed to each other. They're interdependent. As the aircraft lifted off, Emily looked down at the base that had transformed from a place of exile to the birthplace of a new approach to warfare. She thought about her journey from decorated marksman to overlooked medic to pioneering commander and realized that each phase had been necessary. Without her marksmanship training, she couldn't have made those crucial shots. Without her medical experience, she wouldn't have understood the true value of restraint and precision. The integration that defined Stammert wasn't just about combining skills. It was about recognizing that the deepest conflicts between taking life and saving it, between following orders and following conscience, weren't conflicts at all when viewed through the lens of a clear moral purpose. In her pocket, Emily carried the letter from Ibrahim Nazari, the Afghan civilian whose son had been spared by her refusal to take a compromised shot years ago. His words had become something of a personal mantra. Your courage inspired more than just one decision. It inspired a life. Now, as the desert fell away beneath her, Emily understood that courage wasn't just about standing firm in a single moment of crisis. It was about carrying that same clarity of purpose through every action, every decision, every day, whether behind a rifle scope or beside a wounded soldier. The Reed Doctrine wasn't really about her at all. It was about the enduring truth she had always known, but that the military was only now beginning to fully embrace. That the strongest warriors aren't those who can most effectively take lives, but those who most clearly understand why and when lives must be protected, even at great personal cost. That understanding wasn't just changing military operations. It was changing the operators themselves, reminding them that beneath the tactical gear and weaponry, their ultimate purpose remained profoundly human: to protect, to serve, to heal. As her aircraft banked toward the horizon and the next chapter of her journey, Emily Reed, once dismissed as just a medic, reflected on the strange path that had brought her here. 6 years of exile, 1 moment of crisis, a Barrett rifle handed to her when it mattered most, and now a doctrine bearing her name that would train generations of operators to come. The lesson wasn't that she had been right all along, though she had been. The lesson was that true strength comes not from separating our capabilities into neat categories, but from integrating them in service to a clear moral purpose. In the end, Emily Reed wasn't a sniper who became a medic, or a medic who remembered how to shoot. She was simply a warrior who never forgot that the highest purpose of warfare is not victory, but protection. Not destruction, but preservation. Not taking lives, but saving them, even when that sometimes requires the most difficult decisions a soldier can make. And in that integration of purpose, she had found not just a doctrine, but a path forward for herself, for her fellow operators, and for the military she had always served, even when it didn't recognize her true value. Sometimes the most extraordinary people are those who refuse to choose between their capabilities. Instead, they integrate them, finding strength not in specialization, but in wholeness. Not in separation, but in synthesis. Because when the moment comes when lives hang in the balance and seconds matter, they don't ask, "Am I authorized to do this?" They simply ask, "If I don't do this, who will?" And then, without hesitation, they act. 3 years later, Reed Center for Integrated Tactical Operations stood as a testament to how quickly revolutionary ideas can transform institutions when their time has come. Located in Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains, the sprawling facility combined cutting-edge training ranges with advanced medical simulation, Center's physical embodiment of the philosophy that had begun with one woman's refusal to compromise her principles. Major Emily Reed, now Lieutenant Colonel Reed, walked the grounds with a quiet pride she rarely allowed herself to acknowledge. What had started as her personal stand had evolved into a movement that was reshaping combat doctrine. throughout special operations communities worldwide. The British are sending their third delegation next month, reported Captain Daniels, Emily's executive officer, as they inspected a new training facility. The Australians want to establish their own version of the program, and even the Israelis are expressing interest. Emily nodded, watching the group of trainees transition seamlessly from precision shooting drills to emergency medical procedures. Make sure they understand this isn't just about technical skills. The mindset is what matters most. Yes, ma'am. Though I think your reputation makes that point for us. Emily had never sought fame or recognition, but her name had become synonymous with a new paradigm in special operations. The Reed Doctrine was now taught in military academies, and her stand in Kandahar, once used to end her career, was now a case study in moral courage under pressure. Most gratifying to Emily was how the integrated approach had saved lives, not just among Allied forces, but among civilians in conflict zones. Operations conducted under Reed Doctrine protocols reported 78% fewer civilian casualties while maintaining high mission success rates. As she completed her inspection tour, Emily's satellite phone buzzed with a priority message. Colonel Harrington now. General Harrington was requesting an immediate video conference. Emily, Harrington said when the secure connection was established, dispensing with formalities. How quickly can you prepare a specialized team for deployment? Depends on the mission parameters. What's the situation? We have a hostage crisis in Somalia. American aid workers captured by militants. High-risk extraction scenario with significant civilian presence. Emily's mind immediately began calculating possibilities. Standard hostage response teams aren't suitable. This is different. The hostages include 3 combat medics who were training local healthcare workers. Intelligence suggests they've been treating wounded militants, which has kept them alive so far. But the situation is deteriorating. You need an approach that respects their medical status while still extracting them. Exactly. This mission needs your team's unique capabilities. Precision, restraint, and advanced medical skills all in one package. Emily nodded. I'll select the operators personally. We can deploy within 18 hours. Good. One more thing, Commander Morrison has requested to join the operation. Emily paused. Staff Sergeant Morrison, now Commander Morrison, had transformed Stammert into one of the most effective special operations units in the military. Her rise through the ranks had been even faster than Emily's own. Jessica's unit is deployed near Somalia? They were conducting training exercises with local forces when the kidnapping occurred. She's already on the ground with a partial team. Tell her we'll link up at the forward operating base. I'll bring 4 of my top instructors to round out the team. 12 hours later, Emily was airborne with her selected team. Each member represented the best of what the Reed Center had produced: operators with exceptional marksmanship skills and advanced medical capabilities, all united by a commitment to the doctrine's core principles. During the flight, Emily reviewed the mission briefing. The 3 American medics had been kidnapped 4 days ago while working at a rural clinic. They were now being held in a compound on the outskirts of a small village, guarded by approximately 15 militants. Satellite imagery showed civilian structures within 50 meters of the target building. Any conventional assault would risk both the hostages and nearby civilians. Precision airstrikes were ruled out for the same reason. The mission would require exactly the approach Emily had pioneered: surgical application of force followed by immediate medical response, with unwavering commitment to civilian protection throughout. When they landed at the forward operating base in neighboring Djibouti, Commander Morrison was waiting. The years had changed her from the uncertain private Emily had first mentored. Now she stood with the quiet confidence of a seasoned operator who had proven herself in dozens of high-risk missions. Colonel Reed, Morrison greeted her with a professional salute that didn't quite hide her genuine smile. Commander Morrison, Emily returned, equally formal in front of the assembled teams. Status report? We've established surveillance on the target compound. 3 observation posts with rotating teams. The hostages are being kept in the central building, all alive but one with an apparent leg wound. Militants maintain regular patrols, with heightened activity during shift changes at dawn and dusk. Emily nodded appreciatively. Morrison had already laid the groundwork for a precision operation. Let's review the approach options, Emily said, moving toward the tactical planning room. I want multiple ingress routes mapped out with medical contingencies for each phase. For the next 6 hours, they developed a comprehensive operation plan that integrated every aspect of the Reed Doctrine. The approach would be slow and methodical, with sniper teams establishing overlapping fields of fire to provide coverage for the assault element. Each operator would carry specialized medical equipment in addition to tactical gear, prepared to transition from combatant to caregiver in seconds. The key challenge is the civilian presence, Emily noted, studying the village layout. We need to time this operation to minimize potential exposure. Local intelligence suggests most villagers gather at the central well in late afternoon, Morrison reported. That creates a 40-minute window when the area near the compound has minimal civilian activity. Emily considered this information. Then we insert at 16:20 hours, establish sniper positions by 1700, and execute precisely at 1730. The combined Team 4 Reed Center instructors and 6 Stammert operators spent the remaining hours preparing equipment and rehearsing critical procedures. Emily noticed that several of Morrison's team members wore a distinctive patch on their gear, a rifle crossed with a medical caduceus, the unofficial symbol of the Reed Doctrine that had spontaneously emerged among operators. Your team has embraced the philosophy fully, Emily observed during a private moment with Morrison. They've seen it work, Morrison replied simply. When you save both your targets and your team while protecting civilians, the old ways start to look obsolete. Emily smiled slightly, spoken like a true believer. I learned from the source. Morrison paused, then added more personally. Everything I've accomplished started with you handing me that rifle on the training range and saying, I brought my whole self to the task. You've come far since then. We all have. Your stand changed everything, Emily. Not just procedures, but how we think about our purpose. Before Emily could respond, Captain Daniels approached with updated intelligence. Final surveillance report confirms 15 tangos, 3 hostages. Weather conditions optimal. We're green across the board, Emily nodded. Prepare for insertion. The operation began exactly as planned. 2 helicopters inserted the team 10 kilometers from the target, allowing them to approach on foot to avoid detection. They moved in staggered formation, maintaining communications discipline and using natural terrain features for concealment. By 1650 hours, the 4 sniper teams had reached their designated positions, each with clear sight lines to the compound, but carefully situated to avoid any risk to civilian structures. Emily and Morrison established the command position on a ridge overlooking the entire area. Through high-powered optics, they could see the hostages being moved to the central building, 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing the distinctive vests of medical personnel. Precision teams, report status, Emily commanded over the SecureCom system. Precision 1, in position, 4 tangos in sight. Precision 2, in position, 3 tangos visible, eastern approach. Precision 3, in position, covering southern exit. Precision 4, in position, overwatch established. Assault team status? Assault element ready, 200 meters from infil point. Emily checked her watch. 17:25 hours. The timing was perfect. The village well area had cleared as predicted, creating the vital window with minimal civilian presence. All elements, execute. On my mark. Emily took a deep breath, centering herself as she had taught countless others to do. 3, 2, 1, mark. The operation unfolded with choreographed precision. The sniper teams simultaneously eliminated the perimeter guards' 4 shots, 4 targets neutralized without alerting the main compound. The assault team immediately began their approach, moving swiftly but methodically toward the target building. Contact, came the calm report from assault team. 2 tangos down. Proceeding to main structure. Everything was proceeding according to plan when the unexpected occurred. A group of children appeared from a side street, heading directly toward the compound. They were carrying water containers, apparently returning from the well earlier than anticipated. In a conventional operation, this development would have forced either a mission abort or the terrible choice to proceed despite civilian presence. But the Reed Doctrine had prepared them for exactly this contingency. Shift to phase echo, Emily commanded instantly, invoking the predetermined alternate approach designed for civilian presence. Precision teams maintain positions. Assault team, medical pivot. Without hesitation, the assault team split into 2 elements. The first maintained security positions, while the second, led by Morrison herself, immediately transitioned to civilian protection mode. They intercepted the children before they reached the danger zone, with Morrison using her language skills to calmly direct them to safety. Simultaneously, Emily adjusted the overall tactical approach. Rather than the direct assault they had planned, they would now use a more gradual containment strategy, systematically securing the compound's perimeter while creating a safe corridor for civilian evacuation. Precision 4, I need eyes on. The rear exit, Emily directed. If tangos attempt to move hostages, you are authorized for disabling shots only. The operation's tempo had changed, but its fundamental approach remained intact. Precision application of force with absolute priority on civilian and hostage safety. For the next 20 minutes, the team methodically secured the compound building by building. When militants attempted to use the hostages as shields, precision marksmen delivered carefully placed shots that disabled without killing shattering weapons, inflicting non-lethal wounds to extremities, creating momentary distractions that allowed the assault team to gain advantage. By the time they reached the central building, the team had neutralized 12 militants without a single civilian casualty. 3 remained inside with the hostages. Final approach, Morrison reported. From her position near the main entrance, thermal imaging shows 3 tangos and 3 hostages in the central room. 1 tango appears to be receiving medical treatment from the hostages. This presented a complex ethical situation. One of the militants was now effectively a patient, being treated by the hostage medics. Under the Reed Doctrine, this created special considerations. Understood, Emily responded. Initiate negotiation protocol. Rather than storming the room, Morrison established communication with those inside. Speaking through a translator, she offered medical evacuation for all wounded, including militants, in exchange for peaceful surrender. After tense minutes of back and forth, the door opened. The 3 American medics emerged first, followed by the 3 militants, 1 carried on a makeshift stretcher, seriously wounded. Secure the militants, Emily ordered. Medical team, assess all patients. Priority based on severity, not affiliation. This was perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of the Reed Doctrine in action, the immediate transition from combat to treatment, with care provided based solely on medical need. The wounded militant received the same emergency attention as an injured hostage, with team members who had just been prepared to shoot now working to save lives without distinction. As the helicopters approached for extraction, Emily joined Morrison on the ground. Perfect execution of the doctrine, Emily observed as they supervised the loading of both hostages and prisoners. It worked exactly as you designed it, Morrison replied. 10 years ago, this scenario would have ended with dead hostages, dead militants, and probably civilian casualties. The difference isn't the tactics, Emily said. It's the underlying philosophy. Understanding that our job isn't just to win fights, it's to protect life, even in the midst of conflict. The after-action report described the operation as textbook application of Reed doctrine principles, resulting in complete mission success with 0 friendly casualties, 0 civilian casualties, and minimal opposing force fatalities. What it couldn't capture was the profound shift in mindset that had made such an outcome possible. 2 weeks later, back at the Reed Center, Emily received an unexpected visitor. General Matthews, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, had arrived with minimal entourage to see the training facility firsthand. Impressive operation in Somalia, Matthews said as Emily showed him the center's capabilities. The president mentioned it specifically during our last briefing. The team performed exceptionally, Emily replied, deflecting personal credit as always. It's more than that, Colonel. What you've created here represents a fundamental evolution in how we approach armed conflict. Matthews stopped walking to face her directly. I've been in the military for 40 years. I've seen doctrines come and go. But this is different. Emily waited, sensing there was more to this visit than a simple facility tour. The Secretary of Defense has authorized the establishment of a new directorate, Matthews continued. Integrated Tactical Operations will become a formal branch within Special Operations Command, with full funding and permanent status. Emily felt a moment of profound satisfaction. The approach born from her stand in Kandahar would now be institutionalized, ensuring it would continue beyond any individual champion. There's more, Matthews added. We want you to lead it as its first general. Full promotion with operational authority across all service branches. Emily blinked, momentarily at a loss for words. Sir, I'm honored. But my strength has always been in training and development, not high-level command. Matthews smiled. That's precisely why it needs to be you. This isn't just about operational leadership, it's about moral leadership. About embedding a philosophy that transforms how we fulfill our duty. Later that evening, Emily found herself alone in her office, contemplating the general's offer. On her desk sat a framed photograph, not of herself, but of the 3 medical hostages from Somalia, now safely home with their families. Beside it was a letter from Ibrahim Nazari, the Afghan civilian whose son had been spared years ago, updating her on young Tariq's progress through medical school. These were the true measures of her work's impact, not in promotions or accolades, but in lives preserved and futures protected. Her satellite phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Commander Morrison. I heard the news, Morrison said without preamble. General Reed. It has a nice ring to it. I haven't accepted yet, Emily replied, but you will. Morrison's voice held absolute certainty, because it's not about the rank or the title. It's about ensuring the doctrine survives and spreads. Emily smiled to herself. You know me too well. I learned from the best. Morrison paused. There's something else you should know. Remember those children we diverted during the Somalia operation? One of them was the village leader's daughter. She told her father she wants to become a doctor, like the American soldier who protected us instead of hurting us. Emily felt a familiar tightness in her throat. History repeats itself. In the best possible way. Your legacy isn't just a military doctrine, Emily. It's a generation of people, both in and out of uniform, who see conflict differently because of your example. After they ended the call, Emily stepped outside to the training grounds, now quiet in the evening twilight. In the distance, she could see the lights of the Medical Simulation Center where tomorrow's integrated operators would learn to heal with the same precision they learned to shoot. The journey from that desert ridge in Syria, where she had first picked up a rifle after 6 years of exile, to this moment had been unpredictable and profound. What had begun as a single act of moral courage, refusing an unsafe shot in Kandahar, had evolved into a movement that was reshaping the very nature of special operations. But the core truth remained unchanged. The artificial separation between warrior and healer was just that, artificial. The deepest strength came not from specialization, but from integration, from bringing one's whole self to the mission, whether behind a rifle scope or at a wounded soldier's side. 6 months later, Brigadier General Emily Reed stood before the first graduating class of the newly established Integrated Tactical Operations Directorate. The 300 operators before her represented every branch of the military and several allied nations, all trained in the philosophy and techniques that had once been dismissed as impractical idealism. Today you join a community that refuses to accept false choices, Emily told them. You will not choose between being effective warriors and compassionate healers. You will not choose between mission success and civilian protection. You will not choose between following orders and following conscience. She paused, looking across the faces of men and women who would carry these principles into the field. Instead, you will integrate these seeming opposites. You will understand that true strength comes not from compartmentalizing our capabilities or our moral commitments, but from bringing them together in service of our highest purpose, the protection of life, even in the midst of conflict. Among the graduating class, Emily spotted several familiar faces. Morrison was there, recently promoted to captain and now leading Stammert's training division. Ortiz and Thompson, from that first critical mission, were now senior instructors. And in the front row sat Private Tariq Nazari, the Afghan boy whose life had been spared by her refusal to take an unsafe shot, now grown and having followed her path into service. The world will tell you that combat requires emotional distance, Emily continued. That to be effective, you must separate your capability to harm from your commitment to heal. The world is wrong. The most effective protectors are those who never forget what they're protecting, not abstract concepts like national security or strategic interests, but human lives, human potential, human dignity. As she concluded her address, Emily reflected on the long, unlikely path that had brought her here. From the quiet, underestimated medic with secretly exceptional skills to the architect of a transformative approach to special operations. From being silenced for her principles to having those same principles become doctrine. The ceremony complete, Emily found herself approached by a young lieutenant who had graduated at the top of the class. "General Reed," the lieutenant said, clearly nervous to be addressing such a legendary figure. "I just wanted to thank you personally. Your stand in Kandahar, that's why I joined. I was one of those children." Emily looked at her in surprise. "You were there?" The lieutenant nodded. "My family lived in the village. I was 7 when your team came for the high-value target. I remember the other soldier taking the shot, and the aftermath." Her voice quieted. "2 of my friends died. That day, Emily felt the weight of that moment across the years. I'm sorry I couldn't stop it." "But you tried. You refused the order. You filed the report afterward, even knowing it would cost you." The lieutenant stood straighter. "That's why I'm here. Because I saw that it's possible to be a warrior with principles, even when it costs you everything." Later that evening, Emily stood alone on the balcony of her quarters, watching the sunset over the training grounds of the center that had grown from her vision. Below, new recruits were practicing the integrated approach, moving seamlessly from precision shooting drills to emergency medical procedures, learning to be whole rather than divided. Her satellite phone buzzed with a message from Morrison. "Saw the graduation. Your speech inspired them." "But not as much as your example." Emily smiled slightly. The doctrine that bore her name had never really been about her at all. It was about the enduring truth she had recognized long ago, that the strongest warriors are those who never forget why they fight, not for glory or vengeance or even victory, but for protection, for life. In the gathering darkness, Emily Reed once dismissed as just a medic until a Navy SEAL commander had handed her his Barrett 50 cal in desperate circumstances contemplated how a single moment of moral clarity could ripple outward through time and lives and institutions. The greatest legacy of the Reed Doctrine wasn't in the operations it had transformed or the lives it had saved, though these were significant. The true legacy was in the minds it had changed, the generations of operators who would never again see a false choice between effectiveness and compassion, between tactical success and moral integrity. They would understand, as Emily had always understood, that the deepest strength comes not from hardening ourselves against the humanity of others, but from embracing it fully, even in the most difficult moments. Especially in the most difficult moments. Because sometimes the most extraordinary people are those who refuse to be divided, even when the world insists they must choose. They integrate their capabilities, their commitments, their whole selves in service of a clear moral purpose. And when the moment comes when lives hang in the balance and seconds matter, they don't hesitate. They act, bringing everything they are to the task at hand. In the end, Emily Reed wasn't a sniper who became a medic, or a medic who remembered how to shoot. She wasn't even a general who had created a doctrine. She was simply a human being who had refused to accept artificial divisions between skills, between roles, between principles and practice. That refusal, that integration had changed everything. And as twilight settled over the mountains, Emily knew with quiet certainty that this change would endure long after her name was forgotten. Because the truth at its core was timeless. We are strongest when we are whole. When we bring our full selves, our precision and our compassion, our capability and our conscience to every challenge we face. This was the Reed Doctrine, not written in manuals or taught in classrooms, but embodied in the lives of those who understood that the highest purpose of power is protection. Of those who asked not, "Am I authorized to do this?" but simply, "If I don't do this, who will?" And then, without hesitation, acted to save lives. Even when it meant breaking rules. Even when it meant risking everything. Even when it meant picking up a rifle after 6 years and proving that she was never just a medic. She was exactly who she needed to be when others needed her most. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.